Welcome back to episode 4 of SC Academy for season 2025. Today we'll be reviewing round 2 as well as a preview of the upcoming games this weekend in round number 3. Round 3 is actually posing as a little bit of a difficult week, but luckily we have left this episode pretty late in the week to record because there's a few key ins and outs for a few clubs across the paddocks this weekend. We'll be discussing our trade thoughts today as well. I'll be boosting, which I'm sure 99% of pretty much all super coaches will be doing, but let's get it right into it with a review of round number 2. I had a good week last week with a nice 1342. That's now pushed me in the top 4% overall. Full disclosure, however, I'm actually really disappointed in this score. It sounds bizarre to say that, but I actually cost myself over 100 points this week. So as I mentioned last week, I was on a plane between the Warriors-Seagulls game and the Panthers-Roosters game. And this was pretty much the only reason why I had the score that I had and saved myself. Because the only reason I didn't have the VC on Turbo and the C on Cleary was the fact that I wouldn't be able to swap it mid-flight, obviously. So thankfully, I had the VC on Kale and Ponga. The only problem was that I had no Storm assets to be able to switch the captaincy to get the captaincy on Ponga. So I sat down, I crunched numbers. I was a Campbell Graham owner, and although I was not disappointed in his base, especially in the first week, I had some concerns about that right edge for South and how much attacking output they were actually going to get. And although they were coming up against a reasonably favourable matchup in the Dragons, I was a little concerned. More the fact that we were running into the Sharks and the Panthers in the 2 following weeks. I was concerned that he had the potential to leak cash. So I ended up deciding to trade out Campbell Graham on the Thursday night to Jack Howarth, who scored I think it was 94 in the first week, and came at 60 or something K cheaper. I mean, the big thing is that, and I recommend this to everybody, is that when I was considering this trade, most of the time I wouldn't consider a 129 worthy of burning a trade, especially in round 2. However, having said that, I sat there and I crunched the numbers, got the calculator out, and worked out, okay, if I do make this trade, what trades does it allow me to do next week? So I had a full plan coming into round 3. Obviously now with a couple of injuries, especially one Zed Hosking, don't get me started on that one. Obviously with a few injuries, that plan has changed, but always having that idea of, okay, if I do make this trade that I wasn't looking at doing in the first place, what is it going to allow me or not allow me to do in the following week? So I really sat there, crunched the numbers, and decided that trading out Campbell Graham was the way to go. Thankfully for me, in the South Dragons game, Campbell Graham only scored 30 odd and is now about to lose a ton of cash. So it worked out perfectly in that regard. Now, why I am disappointed. I kept banging on last week about holding Luke Metcalf. I did so, but I didn't have the balls to play him. And I ended up playing Shibasaki over him instead. Also, in my hooker position, I started Corey Pakes and sat Sandon Smith. Every week we're going to have rounds where, if I played this reserve, I would have scored this X amount of points more, whatever. But the problem for me and the disappointment lies in the fact that these were 2 very viable options. And they were actually the smart move. Looking into it, I was pretty dumb to roll with Pakes and Shibasaki over Metcalf and Smith. So yeah, look, I'm in the top 4% now. I was in the top 8% for last week, but I really got lucky based off the fact of having the VC on Ponga. But then capitalizing on that is the main thing, being able to move your pieces around to be able to capitalize. So I'm giving myself a B- for this week. although the score looks good, there are a lot of other things that could have gone better. So yeah, 13-42, we will take it. Let's just get right into the games from last week. We had some wild results. This one wasn't too wild. Knights versus Dolphins. Knights 26, Dolphins 12. Top scorers, Kalen Ponga 129, which we've touched on. Bradman Best 99 and Dylan Lucas with a 97. Some notable scores, Greg Marzu with an 84. Fletcher Sharp keeps plugging away, looks amazing, running the ball at 6 there with an 82. Couple of lowlights. I mean, look, 40s aren't necessarily normally lowlights, but just from what we saw from them in round 1 and how high everybody was on them, I've got Max Plath at 49 and Tom Gilbert at 47. We expect these guys to do a lot more as the season goes on. Hopefully that 47 for Gilbert especially is basically his floor. But then we had Jermaine Asako 39, and again back-to-back weeks hammer with a 30. Just really disappointing stuff from the Dolphins. Couple of notes: Ponga looked lethal wherever he went. Wherever he went, points just followed. As soon as he had the ball in his hands, it didn't matter if it was the left side, the right side. As long as Kalen Ponga was part of the attack, the Knights seemed to score, which is really, really positive stuff for Kalen Ponga owners, myself included. Dolphins, they defensively just dropped off so much from week 1. They had a decent defensive showing against South in week 1, but just looked awful in this game. So I did say in my first episode that I expected the Dolphins to slip this year, so I can't say I don't expect it, but I didn't expect their defense to be that bad in this game against the Knights. It was a reasonably sloppy game. I do actually expect the Knights attack to improve even more as the season goes on. So yeah, concerning signs if you're a Dolphins fan with that defensive effort more than anything else, and encouraging stuff if you're the Knights. You know, it was a sloppy game again. They got away with a win in round 1 against the Tigers in a sloppy game where the attack was looking really clunky. The attack looked better this game, but it was still a reasonably sloppy game. So, one foot in front of the other. I think they're improving, and I think their attack probably gets even better. Moving on to Warriors and Sea Eagles. Warriors 36, Sea Eagles 16. This started the wild results of the weekend. I don't think anybody could have predicted this, nor could have anybody predicted Luke Metcalf with a 117. As I said, by leaving him out of my squad, I cost myself... Actually, now that I think of it, now that he's been upgraded, I cost myself 100 points when he was only at 100. I've probably cost myself about 120, 130 points, which is why I'm, again, really disappointed in the week. Luke Metcalf 117, Jason Saab 114, Wade Egan with a 110. A couple of notable scores. Leia Tower 75. This is kind of what we expected in preseason. I still didn't want to touch him until I'd seen a couple of games, but he was way better than what he was in the first round. And then RTS again with a 64. Kind of just plugging away there. It's somebody that I regret not owning in terms of ownership, and when he goes big, I'm going to be cooked. But having said that, he's always been a plotter. Like, he always scores around those 50, 60 points and really doesn't really have that massive upside. As I said, if he does go big, I'm cooked as a non-owner. He's somebody that makes me regret not owning him, especially when he crossed for that try. But if he's scoring a try and getting 64, it's not the worst thing in the world as a non-owner. I'm not too discouraged there. A couple of lowlights. Charles Nickel Clockstad, 38. Finally, I get to pat myself on the back for one of the calls that I made in preseason. Olakuatu, 44. This is exactly what I was talking about. He's rated as one of the best 2RFs in Supercoach, and I don't believe that is the case. Manly are inconsistent. Olakuatu is inconsistent in terms of Supercoach scoring. Do not get me wrong. I think Olakuatu is one of the best second rowers in the NRL, but I do not think he's one of the best second rowers in Supercoach. You know, NRL ability and Supercoach don't necessarily coincide with each other. Although we do see a lot of the top players in the NRL getting great scores, it doesn't just naturally translate. So yeah, Olaquatu with a 44 was definitely a snap back to reality for him. And then Turbo with a 59, which was pretty awful. Manly back at their inconsistent best. We saw this all of last season. They just can't string games together. Turbo 59 with a try. Yeah, he looked very ordinary. And then on top of that, both Turbo and DC left the field and didn't return. So yeah, warning signs there at Manly. Although they looked absolutely amazing in round one, it was against the Cowboys. The Cowboys are my wooden spooners. And yeah, the Warriors just revitalised themselves after that loss in Vegas and came away with a huge upset here. Talking about huge upsets, what in the world happened here? I was on the plane coming home, and I'll be honest, the plane was starting to lower, and I took flight mode off because I just couldn't wait to see what was happening here. I was really worried that I'd now looped Kalen Ponga, and I was going to turn on the Supercoach app and see Nathan Cleary on like 180 points or something ridiculous. Anyway, the plane was getting lower and lower, and I was getting a reception, and I went to load up the Supercoach app, and it wasn't quite loading, but I got a messenger notification come through from one of my Supercoach group chats saying, what the fuck is going on? And as soon as I saw that message, I had some hope. About a minute later, the Supercoach app loaded, and I nearly jumped out of the plane. Or threw my phone across the entire I was gobsmacked. Absolutely gobsmacked as to what I saw. Panthers 32, Roosters 38, top scorers, Daniel Tupou 119, James Tedesco 119, Connor Watson 103. A couple of notable scores, Sandon Smith, who I sat, 76, Casey McLean 72, and then Naf White 56. He's going to make a bit of cash now, which is nice. Only a little bit, but it's good to see. Lowlights, Brian To'o 34, Dylan Edwards 50. Panthers were just gifting ball and field position, and then To'o 34 with a try. That's a huge concern for owners. Yeah, if you've got Brian To'o near your team, I'd be worried that he's going to lose a bunch of cash. You can obviously afford to hold him one more week because he didn't play round one. I'd have a look at him this week, but you know, if the same kind of thing happens again, I'd be pretty concerned. And yeah, Penrith might not be as defensively sound as we first thought, conceding 38 points in this game against a team that they were expected to towel. I think the line was like 22.5 or something ridiculous. Yeah, they just might not be as defensively sound as we first thought. Obviously, we can see with their 32 that they've still got points in them, but whether they can absolutely lock teams down for 80 minutes, we just don't know at this stage. Dragons versus Rabbitohs. Oh, I'm glad to be wrong about a game this weekend. If there was one game I was glad to be wrong about, it's definitely one with my own side in it when I've tipped against them. Dragons 24, Rabbitohs 25, coming away with a 1-point win. Top scorers, Clint Gutherson, 146. He's now done it back-to-back weeks and gone absolutely massive. Talking about back-to-back weeks and pretty huge. Tuipulotu, 99. Terrell Sloan, 99, but he's pretty much going to be in and out of that squad. Some notable Supercoach relevant scores. Mama Zealous with a 94, crashed over for a try and looked really good. Jamie Humphries with a 67 and Lockie Hubner with a 52. A couple of lowlights, Val Holmes at a 40. Campbell Graham with a 32. Thank God I traded him out. And Keon Kolomatangi with a 33. Left edge still looking dangerous for the Dragons, but having said that, Holmes is still not worth the buy at this stage. I've got a little section a bit later on with the highest and lowest break-evens, and he is one of the highest in the game at the moment. But once he does drop cash, it could be a very interesting watch. Gutho is now going to make a ton of cash, and Jamie Humphries' job seems pretty secure. So if you are considering jumping on the Jamie Humphries bandwagon, I personally can't as a Heinz Cleary owner, but I can definitely understand and see why. His job does look secure. He looks like he's going to make a bit of cash. So yeah, I can understand why you would jump on. Cowboys versus Sharks. Cowboys 12, Sharks 36. Top scorers, Sammy Stonestreet 112, Kale Ero 111, and Nico Hines with an 86. A couple of notable relevant scores. Scotty Drinkwater was a 65, but again, just scoring a junk time try to get him to that. I've got him there as a relevant score just because it's Scott Drinkwater, but I wouldn't be excited if you're an owner. Again, got bailed out with a junk time try 2 weeks in a row. So, Brett Nickera, 61. Honestly, I've got him there because I needed to find somebody reasonably relevant for Supercoach who scored okay. He pretty much just scored his par score, so it's notable. Lowlights, Duffy went even worse than last week, 22. Spoiler alert for the later reveal of the ins and outs for each team. He has now been axed. So if you are a Tom Duffy owner, get him gone. I don't know to who. I'm so glad that I faded him. Sitting at 198k makes it the most awful price point to be able to get off somebody. You're going to have to be spending up and spending cash that you could have been using in other areas if you had have faded him. And this is why I banged on in round 1. Locking in Hines and Cleary in round 1 was the way to go. He's now been completely axed from the side. He's had 2 low scores back to back, and now you're going to have to spend up in halfback when you could have had other positions to play with and strengthen your team in other areas. So yeah, really, really, really worrying signs for Duffy owners. Not so much obviously in terms of owning Duffy because he'll be gone this week, but just concerning signs into what trades they're going to make this weekend when we've had so many ins and outs. AFB 46. Look, it's probably his floor. Didn't cross for a try, so it's pretty much expected. Purdue had a 36, but that was with a sin bin, so I'm actually slightly encouraged by that. If he didn't have that sin bin taken off him, we're looking in the mid 40s. So I'm not too concerned there. I still think he will just have a slower cash gen. His cash gen will probably start a little bit later and climb a little bit slower, but I still think he will make money. Cowboys looked awful again, and most notably, Nico Hines returned to goal kicking in this game. I heard a few whispers that apparently the other day he wasn't goal kicking in training again and Trindle was taking shots, but I think that's more just a management thing more than anything. Moving on to Raiders versus Broncos. Raiders 32, Broncos 22. Top scorers, Starling with 103, Payne Haas with 99, and Matty Nicholson on debut with a 98. Cross for 2 tries, looked incredible, passed the eye test. And look, let's be honest, the bloke would have played round 1 if he was ready to go. The fact that he's slotted straight into that squad and taken it with 2 hands and scored a 98 on debut was absolutely incredible. A couple of notable scores. Jesse Arthurs goes bang again with a 96. So glad to be an owner and not having to trade him in this week to get that big break even. Corey Horsburgh, again, bang, 84. And then Tamale, who not only scored a 60, but also held his spot for next week as well, which is very encouraging signs for current owners. Almost close to a must trade in. However, I'm going against that grain. I'm currently a non-owner and I'm not trading him in this week, but I'll get into why a little bit later. But yeah, has a nice negative break even now and seems to have job security there with Albert Hopewade being dropped. Lowlights. Reece Walsh, 9. I said it last week that as Iongi owners, we were in front of the 3 gun fullback owners. Although Iongi, which we'll get to, didn't do anything in the Eels-Tigers game, is still ahead of those owners of Turbo, Ponga and Walsh. Walsh with a 9. Jajeski with an 18. We said he was a trap. We wanted to steer clear of him. Glad we have. But yeah, a couple of notes. Raiders just playing full of heart. They look like they really want to go out there and win. They're a galvanised side. They've really got something to prove. Their forward pack looks great. Just effort play after effort play after effort play. And at the end of the day, regardless of talent on the park, Broncos have got it all. But if you're not showing heart, you're not putting in, you're not going to win football games. And the Raiders absolutely proved that on the weekend, just playing off the back of each other. And yeah, look absolutely incredible, especially in the forwards. We expect Madge to rip the Broncos to shreds. I don't think he'll be very happy at all after this game, and I would expect that they'll get flogged in training this weekend, and expect a reasonable bounce back from them. But yeah, Reece Walsh was absolutely nowhere to be seen. Moving on to that Eels and Tigers game. Look, I'll still stick by my thoughts as the Cowboys as wooden spooners, but the Eels aren't making it any better for themselves. Eels 6, Tigers 32. Top scorers, Taruva with 117, Galvin 101, Buller 93. A couple of notable scores. May with an 87 will continue to make cash. He looks absolutely amazing in the front row. Zach Lomax, I've actually got to give some credit. 79 in a team that only scored 6 points. Reasonably respectable. Stafford Toa. If you remember back to episode 1, we pointed this guy out as somebody that we wanted in our side. He's come back into this game and come back with a 76. He has only played one game, so we do get to watch him again this week before we jump on. But I'm really excited about Stafford Toa and getting him anywhere near my team. And then Adam Dewey with a 75. A couple of lowlights. Jerome Luai with a 19. If you're a Luai owner, you've got to jump off now. He's going to lose you so much cash. Isaiah Yongi, 25. Yeah, disappointing. He'll still make cash at some point. Well, he'll probably make cash this week. It's just, where can we really trust him? I don't know. It's real big warning signs. We do need to see the Eels turn a page, and yeah, I'm getting slightly concerned. But again, scored 14 points better than scored 16 points better than Reece Walsh. So look, at the end of the day, it's another slight win in the Iongi owner camp versus the Walsh Turbo Ponga camp. But yeah, pretty concerning signs. Dylan Brown, also very concerning. Now blows out to like a 99 break even or something ridiculous with a 34. Eels wooden spoon contenders, they just had no resilience after that Storm game, unlike a side like the Warriors, who were galvanised after their loss. The Eels somehow looked even worse. I say worse only because they're not facing, a side like the Storm, who are premiership contenders. They're facing 3-time wooden spooners, the Tigers. Don't get me wrong, the Tigers have gotten way better, but they're nowhere near the level of a Storm, and the Eels were still absolutely embarrassed in this game. So the big thing was Adam Dewey retained the goal kicking upon Api Coruscant's return. So very interesting watch there. Again, a little bit of a spoiler alert, but I will be dumping Dylan Brown and picking up Adam Dewey, and I'll explain a little bit why in the coming slides here, and just my thoughts behind it. Moving on, Bulldogs versus Titans. Bulldogs 40, Titans 24. Top scorers, Tino, back for his first game from injury, 109. Viliami Kikau with a 90 and Reid Marnie with a 78. So notable scores, Josh Curran with a 78, Jacob Preston with a 66, couple of lowlights, Dave Fafita with a 33, and Jaden Campbell with a 46. I've kind of only outlined them there because of their price point. They do have excuses. Titans late attack pretty much the late attack made the game look more respectable than what it actually was, and it only came after Burton and Kickout both left the field. Fafita has excuses. He's still recovering from injury, and he looms as a very interesting buy when he gets fit and when he bottoms out in price. So if Fafita can keep staying on the bench and dropping cash left, right, and centre, that's fantastic for us as non-owners, as a looming buy when he eventually gets fit and drops in cash. Moving on to round 3 games, we've got first up tonight, Storm versus Panthers. Storm changes, Nelson Asafa-Solomona in, Anderson in, Warbrick and Valepu out. Panthers changes, Laurie goes to fullback, Schneider and Papali'i are in, and Edwards and Eisenhuth out. My match prediction here is Storm 1-12. Oh, we've gone the wrong way. Warriors versus Roosters. Warriors changes, unchanged 17. The Roosters changes, they're actually boosts. Collins in, Lenu in, Radley in, Makatoa, Lossaloo and Fogarty out. Match prediction here, I've narrowly got the Warriors 1-12. I think just being at home might slightly tick the advantage into their favour. So I think the Warriors in a quite a high scoring but tight game. Moving on, Broncos versus Cowboys. Broncos unchanged 17. Stags comes into the reserve, so a little bit of a watch for a Shibasaki or a Dean Mariner if they come out before kickoff with Stags looming. And then Cowboys changes, Taumalolo, Nanai and Clifford in, Lawton, Burns, Edwards and Duffy out. Prediction here, Broncos 13+. I think after the win last week, as I said, Madge would have absolutely torn them to shreds, and the Cowboys just do not seem like they're getting any better. So I have the Broncos 13+ here. Moving on, Sharks versus Rabbitohs. Sharks with an unchanged 17. Rabbitohs changes, Whiten and LeBlanc come in. Bentley, Harpay and Hubner come out. Interestingly enough, I am a Hubner owner. He's suspended for 2 weeks. I will be holding. I was quite encouraged about his score on the weekend. I think he has a pretty low floor. He's going to make some cash, and I think he's playable in a lot of teams. Match prediction here is Sharks 13+. Dolphins versus Tigers. Dolphins are unchanged. However, Bostock and Finafuiaki loom in the reserve, so would not be surprised to see a few late changes there. Again, with the Tigers, they're unchanged as well. Some concerns around Jareem Buller with a foot injury. So Heath Mason looms in the reserves if he's not good to go. I have Tigers 1-12 here. I think their attack will be just a little bit too good for the Dolphins' defense. But if the Dolphins can defend like they did in round 1, then who knows? But along with their defense, their attack really hasn't clicked into gear yet either. So who knows? This game could be anything. We still don't know where the Tigers are at. Although they demolished the Eels, I feel like the Eels and the Cowboys are the Tigers of last year. So again, who knows at this time of year? But yeah, I've gone for Tigers 1-12 here. Titans versus Knights. Titans changes, Francis, Isaac Fasua Malawi and AKP. Oh my god. Francis and Isaac Fasua Malawi are in. AKP and Jermaine Jolliffe are out. Knights, they've got a bunch of changes. Jones and Kant in, Elliott to 13. We actually expect Dylan Lucas to miss out, which is unfortunate as an owner. He's been going absolutely huge. There's talk that yesterday at training he left the field with a hamstring injury. We haven't heard anything official from the Knights, but we're thinking around 2 to 4 weeks. They do have the bye next week, so hopefully he's good to go in the following week. So yeah, I will be holding. Obviously, he's got a huge negative break even. He's looked amazing. But yeah, pretty concerned about that hamstring injury. We do expect Jermaine McEwen to come into that side for Dylan Lucas. Match prediction here, even with the ins and outs, I think Knights 1-12. Moving on to Eels and Bulldogs. Footy Dean. Oh my God, I've missed this guy more than anything. Dean Hawkins comes in. Ronald Volkman comes out. Josh Adokar and Ryan Madison are looming in the reserve, so we'll wait to see if there's any late changes there. Bulldogs changes. Haywood goes to 6. Moran and Saluka Fafita come in, and Burton and Kickout, as we know, are out. Match prediction here is Bulldogs 1-12. Seagulls and Raiders. Seagulls changes. Kula and Takiaho in. Falalo and Sipley out. Raiders changes. Savage and Mooney come in. Hopewadi and Hosking are out. My match prediction here is Seagulls 1-12. It is worth noting that Turbo is 50-50 to play, and this is the last game of the round as well. So if you are a Turbo owner, you do need to be slightly concerned that going into the last game, you're not going to know whether or not Turbo is going to play. My succession plan is I am holding Turbo this week. I can see why a lot of people are trading him, but I had other moves to prioritize. I am going to hold Turbo this week. I'm quite scared of being a non-owner if he's good to go, especially next week against the Eels. My succession plan is if Turbo is ruled out 24 hours prior to the game, I can bring Isaiah Iongi in, which isn't the greatest, but it's not the worst matchup against the Bulldogs. The Bulldogs are pretty defensively sound, but I do expect there to be points in the game. So yeah, Iongi doesn't look the worst on ground by any means, just hasn't had the opportunities around him to score. So yeah, here's my little succession plan if Turbo is ruled out. DCE is good to go though, and also it's a huge win, as we mentioned, for Tamale owners with Hopewade dropped. If Turbo is ruled out, I probably would expect to see Talau go to the wing and then Lehigh Hopewade go to fullback. So if you are a Lehigh Hopewade owner, very exciting times there. Moving on to lowest break-evens. Now after 2 rounds of sample size, we have a decent look at the break-evens. Lowest break-evens: Jesse Arthurs in my squad round 1, -82. Robert Toya in my squad round 1, -70. Tamale, I didn't touch him because of the job security, -59. Starling's just come from nowhere, -58. Saab, -54. Tuapolotu, -52. However, he has the bye this week, so his value will not change. You don't need to jump on early. You can wait a week if you need to. Sandon Smith, -51. Same thing as Tuapolotu with Gutherson, -46. Shibasaki, still going to make some cash, -43. And Pete Mamazelis with a -35. Highest break-evens. Tom Dearden, 143. Charles Nickel-Clockstad, 142. Dylan Edwards, 140. His value won't change this week because he's out with that injury. Val Holmes with a 138. Again, he won't change with the Dragons on the bye. Murray Talangi, 137. Bud Sullivan, 134. James Tedesco, 129. Reece Walsh, 129. Dave Fafita, 127. His value won't change because the Titans had the bye in round 1, so he's only played the 1 game so far. And then Damien Cook on the bye this week with a 126. My trades this week: out Zach Hosking, out Dylan Brown, and out Royce Hunt. I banged on last week about how I wasn't too disappointed with having Royce Hunt as my front row 4, because when realistically am I going to play my front row 4? But a looming Payne Haas absolutely cement himself as a must-have. I feel like if you don't get on Payne Haas this week, maybe next week at the very latest, I think he just continues to rise and rise and rise in cash and becomes almost unobtainable, especially at front row forward. Not a lot of people are going to want to spend money there. So I think while he is pretty much at his bottom dollar this week, you have to jump on now. So I've decided to do so. I've jumped the gun a little bit early on Matty Nicholson. I've brought him in for Zach Hosking. I think with Hosking out, he gets a little bit of an elevated role. As we said, he was going to start round 1 anyway if he was ready to go. So I'm not too concerned about his job security. I think his minutes get better with Hosking not there. And Hosking is rumoured to be gone, I think it was like 4 to 6 weeks or something like that. I am jumping the gun a little bit there, but he passed the eye test for me. I really liked what I saw on the weekend, and he scored in the 90s, so he's going to make cash. But yeah, being able to free up this cash by going for Hosking out, Nicholson in, and then Brown out, Dewey in, allowed me to go all the way from Royce Hunt up to Payne Haas. So that's my theory behind why I've gone early on Nicholson. As for Brown and Dewey, I mean, I'm saving like, I think it's like 150, nearly 200k by going down to Adam Dewey. It frees up the cash for me to get Payne Haas, but also Dewey with the goal kicking versus Brown looking absolutely awful. It's a win-win situation for me. I think I'm going to get more points. I think I'm going to earn more cash. I've obviously freed up more cash, and I've been able to go off a front row 4 who's just going to be stuck there for the rest of the year into the best front row forward in the game in Payne Haas. So for me, it was I don't want to say a win-win-win. It was more like a win-win tie. Obviously, if Zach Hosking wasn't injured, he wouldn't be going anywhere. I absolutely love the bloke. But that's where we have gone this week. Our round 3 team now looks like this. Corey Pakes, I am playing. Sandon Smith, I'm playing also. Doesn't really matter what order these two are in, because we're a little bit short in the second row this week. If I had my way, I would have just been starting Smith and leaving Pakes as a non-scoring reserve. But I've kind of been, I don't want to say forced, but I feel like it's the way to go this weekend with being a little bit short at second row. In front row, straight into VC, Payne Haas, Terrell May, Corey Horsburgh is my reserve, and now Naf White becomes my front row 4, which is fantastic. Honestly, looking at this, for me, I feel like I'm done in front row. Like I now don't have to touch it for the rest of the year. If Naf White sits there as my front row 4, happy days. Like we look at the likes of Haas, May and Horsburgh, and then we look at second row. I've got Tino there, who's a front row, second row dual. He can come up into my front rows if I want to. Naf White can come out down to 2RF, and then I can keep playing with 2RF. So potentially by the end of the season, my 4 front rowers could be Tino, Haas, May and Horsburgh, which is ridiculous to think in round 3, considering that in round 1 I was saying don't spend money at front row. I think Payne Haas is just the anomaly to that, where we can afford to have a punt, especially now at his price currently. As I said, I wouldn't do it in a couple of weeks' time if he continues to climb. It just becomes unobtainable, which is why we're getting him in now. 2RF, as I mentioned, we're a little bit light on this week. Tino, however, is absolutely amazing coming back and scoring over 100 in his first game back. Matty Nicholson, I'm forced to play him this week. I was going to play him anyway, but then Kobe Hetherington is the one I didn't really want to play, but with the news of Dylan Lucas, he shifts to my non-playing reserves. Hubner I would have played as well as a reserve, but he's got that 2-week suspension. Vimalga, I want to move off, but as you can see, obviously, by my trades, I had more pressing issues that I wanted to deal with first. He's going to leak a little bit of cash. I don't like him in my squad, but I felt like if I was going to get on Payne Haas, this was the week, and Vimalga can sit another week. Halfbacks haven't changed. They're probably not going to change all year. Cleary and Hines. I'm playing as a reserve. 5/8, Dewey comes in straight into my starting lineup. Metcalf as my reserve. Centre wings, Garrick, Marzu, Howarth. As we mentioned, we traded Campbell Graham out for Jack Howarth last week. Comes straight into the starting lineup. Jesse Arthurs, and then my non-playing reserves in Purdue, Shibasaki and Toya. Fullback, we've got Tom Travojevic for now and Isaiah Iongi as a non-playing reserve. Don't be surprised if those two switch late in the week for that Tommy Turbo injury. But then we have in our flex position, and with the captaincy on him this week, how can we go past our man Kalen Ponga? All right, well, that was a lot to get through, and I'm glad that we've flown through and given some insight into our thoughts around our round 3 options. Thank you again for joining us. As always, if you've got any questions, comments, hot takes, feedback, I really appreciate the feedback on the mic levels from last week. I hope they're a little bit better this week. I can see the levels pinging up a bit higher, so hopefully the mic settings are a little bit better this week. If they still aren't, please let me know. I'll adjust it again. I'll fix it again. But yeah, help me help you get better and keep delivering good content every week. So yeah, thank you again for joining us this week. We'll be back again next week. A little bit of a later episode this week. Just didn't have some time earlier in the week to record, but glad to get it up and ready and going now. Good luck for this weekend. Let me know how you go. See you all next week.